Welcome to the Qasim Rashid Show, a civil rights lawyer here to expose all forms of injustice with a sprinkling of dad jokes in between. Here's your host, Qasim Rashid.
Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful Sunday, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126. The most awesome show in the multiverse. My friends, thank you for tuning in. As always, I want to thank you for your emails and your notes, your texts, your tweets. I'm grateful y'all listen to the show and grateful you share it with your family and friends. I got some really amazing notes this week. There's one that I want to read that kind of knocked my socks off, that really made me feel good about myself. Somebody sent me a message that said, I'm a better person because I tune into you regularly on Urban View Channel 126 every Sunday. That felt pretty good. That felt really good, actually. And I just want you guys to know I appreciate those. I also got a couple of nasty ones. I put up a post called Hate Mail of the Week, WEAK, and I encourage you to check it out. I share that because to me it's important that you all see what I'm seeing and know that there's ups and downs and we can get through it together. A lot to cover today. Had a great show lined up. Rebekah Jones is here. You might remember her from her work in Florida as a whistleblower against DeSantis fascism when he wanted to open the state before it was ready. Her estimate put that because the state was unready to open, it would result in at least another 4,000 to 5,000 preventable deaths. And the state reopened anyway, and it turned out that even she had undercounted. So we'll bring her on and talk about her work in combating the COVID crisis, in combating injustice. She's just a phenomenal person all around. But before we get there, an actual positive ruling out of the Supreme Court, which is I'm kind of flabbergasted by. You remember the mifepristone case where this right-wing nut jobs went all the way to the Supreme Court, challenging the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to their access to mifepristone. Mifepristone, of course, is an abortion pill, and this lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, saying that mifepristone is dangerous to women. The FDA rushed its approval, and therefore we should ban it altogether. And in an incredible, unanimous 9-0 ruling, 9-0, the Supreme Court rejected this lawsuit protecting mifepristone access. The court ruled that the doctors and anti-abortion groups that had challenged access to the drug did not have standing to sue. Now, what standing basically is, here's the simplest way I can describe what standing actually is. If somebody comes up to you and punches you in the face, and you sue them for punching you in the face, you can say, I have standing because I can show the exact harm that this person directly caused to me. I've got a black eye, and this person punched me in the face, and I have a black eye as a result. Therefore, I have standing. Now, if that person ever punched you and you sued them, you would go to court, and the court would say, okay, what is the standing that you have? And you say, well, this person was mean to me. Well, being mean is not a crime. There's no standing. There's no harm done just by somebody calling you a jerk once. That's not a crime committed. There's no recognizable harm. There's no nexus is the word that's used, right? And so that case would be thrown out altogether. And that's what happened here. The court said that we recognize that many citizens, including the plaintiff doctor here, have sincere concerns about and objections to others using mifepristone and obtaining abortions. This is from Justice Kavanaugh. He goes, but citizens and doctors do not have standing to sue simply because others are allowed to engage in certain activities, at least without the plaintiffs demonstrating how they would be injured by the government's alleged underregulation of others. And so this is actually a good point, right? I mean, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Kavanaugh. I mean, he's right. This is what should have been the ruling at the lower court as well. But he goes on to say that a plaintiff's desire to make a drug less available for others does not establish standing to sue. And that's the exact right answer, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense in that. Now, if the person who took mifepristone said, hey, I was harmed as a result of this, they might have standing. Now, they would still need to prove a whole lot of other things to get to that point in the first place. But this is an important ruling. And you know, I posted this on social media, kind of half in jest, but it was actually, I think it might have some, you know, merit here, that mifepristone reports 5 deaths per 1 million people who use it. It's a death rate of 0.0005%. Viagra, by comparison, has a 15 times greater death rate than mifepristone. So my whole argument was, okay, well, if we are going to allow this argument, this point that mifepristone needs to be banned because it's killing women, well, Viagra is killing 15 times more men. When do we ban Viagra? And obviously, that's never going to happen because men will never allow that to happen because men are crazy. But that's the point here as well, that you can't on one hand argue that mifepristone should be banned because the FDA didn't regulate it properly, but then allow a drug that kills 15 times as many people and say that it was regulated properly. So in a rare win for the Supreme Court, and you guys know how critical I have been of the Supreme Court, but in a rare win for the Supreme Court, mifepristone is still legal. Now, that being said, there's no reason why somebody else can't bring another theory before the Supreme Court to try and ban mifepristone, because I don't know if you heard, but there's kind of this anti-abortion movement happening in America right now. And they're basically throwing anything that they possibly can against the wall to hope something sticks. And so it would not surprise me at all to see something like this come through the you know, judicial pipeline again in the coming weeks. Before we go to break, I also want to talk about the anti-Black movement that we're seeing as well. And I'll just give 3 examples. One, Florida, which we'll talk about in a second, just went ahead and published textbooks saying that Black people benefited from slavery. They're actually making the argument. They actually have the audacity just to flat out make the argument. It's absurd, beyond the pale of comprehension. But not to be outdone, South Carolina has banned AP African American Studies while maintaining AP European Studies. So AP African American History is banned, AP European History is not banned. I mean, that's just flat out white supremacy right there. But you know, here's the part that really gets me. South Carolina's public education system was established in 1868 by one Captain Robert Smalls. I call him the original Captain America. And if you don't know his story, please Google him. For the love of God, Google him. I've talked about him before, but the very short version: born enslaved, escaped at the age of 22 with his family and children, stole a Confederate vessel, dressed up as a Confederate soldier, tricked the Confederacy into letting him leave, navigated it into Union waters, handed it over to President Lincoln, convinced President Lincoln to allow Black people to fight in the Union Army, single-handedly helped win the Civil War, returned to South Carolina, bought the home of his former enslaver, what a flex, and then got elected to the state legislature and then Congress and established the South Carolina public school system. Now, that same South Carolina public school system is banning AP African American Studies. How racist do you need to be to ban children from reading about the man who taught them how to read? Incredible. And then, not to be outdone, Oklahoma, Supreme Court of Oklahoma, has ruled 8-1 to deny reparations of Tulsa survivors. This is the same state, by the way, that gave $50 million to the families of the Oklahoma City bombing, but nothing for Tulsa survivors. And I want to make sure I amend my comment, because a young woman tweeted me that she is the child of a survivor, and that $50 million still was horrifically misrepresented, and it was they had to go through, you know, hoops of fire to get. And I empathize with her, and I'm so glad that she shared that with me to provide that additional context. It so shows how fundamentally unjust the system is. But the broader point I'm making, that between Florida and South Carolina and Oklahoma, the anti-Black and its racist rhetoric is horrific. And if you're not Black and listening to this, remember, anti-Black racism is just a more purified version of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish, anti-brown racism. It's all there, and it's why we need to stand in solidarity with Black Americans to combat this kind of bigotry and violence and hatred, because none of us are free until all of us are free. All right, when we come back from break, we're gonna welcome Rebekah Jones, a brilliant scientist and whistleblower, on her work on combating the COVID pandemic. I want you to subscribe to her Substack as well. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. I'm extraordinarily excited about our guest this week, Rebekah Jones. If you don't follow her on Twitter, I will always call it Twitter. You're missing out. You might remember her from her incredible work to counter the right-wing nut jobbery of Governor DeSantis. She's an award-winning and internationally celebrated scientist turned whistleblower. She studied climate change and disasters with dual majors in journalism, what's the other degree in journalism and science. I'm going to have her correct me in a second, but she came across my radar when during the COVID-19 pandemic she became a whistleblower, and it's not an overestimation to say that her work saved lives. She, like me, got the bug to run for Congress, which she did, which I commend her for, and now heads mesoscale.news on Substack, which I encourage you all to subscribe to. I have. It's been a brilliant use of my time as well. Rebekah, so great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You know, I think this is one reason why I'm so lamenting what Twitter has become, because I feel like it's slowly dying. And, you know, I had a love-hate relationship with Twitter for a long time. And one of the reasons I love Twitter was because it got me connected to people like you and the work that you were doing. Your work tracking COVID-19 in Florida really brought you into the national spotlight. And I don't know if you expected that to happen, but it happened pretty quickly, and it could be jarring. I'd love to hear the backstory. What motivated you? And for our listeners who may not be aware of the work that you did in that space, if you could provide a background, that'd be great too.
Yeah, of course. So for the first 6 months or so of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was the head of data and surveillance and managed all of our public-facing data products, including our, API feeds and the dashboard itself, which, garners quite a bit of national recognition as being the gold standard to which other states should have applied their methodology. And I was asked when the state decided overnight essentially to reopen, despite having done no analysis to see if we were ready to do that, to not only develop the analysis and the metrics that we would use, but to run the analysis and then come up with, the results and have it coded and ready for the dashboard in a weekend. And with a lot of help from my colleagues, miraculously, we pulled it off. Brought it to show, state officials that Sunday evening. And when they saw that our state was not ready and that only 2 of the counties of a 67 county state were ready, they, short story, basically tried to massage the data to make it look like we were ready. And then when that was not enough, just told me to enter data that said yes or no. They met a set of metrics that they did not meet, which I refused to do. The Friday after I told my supervisor that I was going to file a whistleblower complaint about it, I was fired that Monday. And so I was in hiding for a few days. The story leaked. There was already being a story written that I did not know about from USA Today about how I was sidelined from leaks that they had gotten that had nothing to do with me. Jeez. And so that came out the same day I was fired. And I avoided the press as much as I possibly could. I was in hiding for 5 days. I was hearing from people that I had idolized, as a dual major with journalism and geoscience. So earth
Yeah.
science, climate change, things like that.
Yeah.
Like Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon and all these other titans. And I was very polite. I was like, you know what? I love your work. I love what you do, but I don't want to be a story. That's what I flat out said. Is like, I don't want to be a part of the story. The story is what is happening, and that's important.
Yeah.
And then the governor attacked me in front of the vice president on live television by name.
That was incredible. I remember that moment. And that, there is a moment where you have to think, look, I've got kids, I've got a life to live, and you have to wonder, is what I'm doing worth it? Did that kind of a moment ever cross your mind, and how did you manage that?
I wasn't really given an opportunity to even have that moment.
Hmm.
Like I said, I was going to file the complaint, and the next week was supposed to be my first week off, like first days off that year, because I was the only person managing this dashboard, so I couldn't just take off. My parents lost their house in an EF4 tornado on Easter Day that year, and I didn't even go over to help because nobody would have been there for the state of Florida, and 21 people panicking, and the height of the spring epidemic. It just would have gone down, and that would have caused chaos and fear. And so I didn't even go help my parents when they lost everything. And those are supposed to be my first days off. And I told my boss I was going to take a week to think about it. And they fired me the first day off. So to kind of prevent me from filing it, which you have 30 days after you're fired to file
Yeah.
it. So we did. Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to decide what I was going to do. Me coming forward was never a part of the equation, ever. Like if
Sure.
I did anything, it was going to be anonymously. I wanted out of it. I just wanted people to know what was happening because people were going to die. Like our conservative estimates were, if they pushed the reopening, it'd be, I think, 4,400 was about the number of deaths we expected over the summer, and it was twice that. So it's
three 9/11s. Yeah, basically three 9/11s, preventable 9/11s. Do you think that the way the instruction was given to you in hindsight, is it fair to say that they didn't expect you to come back that quickly with an analysis, and it was just basically them going through the motions and then planning to reopen anyway?
So there was a panel that was convened to drive the reopening, of which no one from the Department of Health was included.
Which makes sense, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, the CEO, I think, of Publix was on there, somebody from Disney. The report is still out there. You can still see
Yeah,
the people on
yeah.
the board, and the executive board are all like business people. I think there's two hospital CEOs on there, and that's about as close to medical personnel as they get. I think that for some people, they had legitimately never thought that it was possible that we weren't ready.
Right.
Like they hadn't even explored the idea yet that almost the entire state was not in a place where it was safe to reopen. And then I think there were those that didn't care either way. And my encounter at the Department of Health side was more of the people who had no idea how things were going at all. And seeing it for the first time, there was real distress, especially with two of people who are above me, because they were seeing for the first time after hearing about, the propaganda side of things, which I had nothing to do with, like the governor's press releases and all that other shit, that how well we were doing, and to see our actual data contradict that. I don't even think they had considered it. I mean, none of these people had ever looked inside the black box. They had never touched a piece of code. They had never actually looked at the raw data. Half of them didn't even know what raw data we were publishing at that point, which was embarrassing. Right. They legitimately did not consider that the governor had been publicly lying the whole time.
Speaking of the governor, did he ever call you directly or talk to you directly, or was it just these cowardly attacks from behind a screen?
Oh God, if that man called me, I don't ever directly. No, we only ever spoke directly once. And it was before all this happened once. I don't think he would have recognized me. I mean, he had been to the emergency operations center where I worked several times. I mean, I worked every single activation that we had, Hurricane Michael, the Dorian scare, whole bunch of other stuff. He probably would not have recognized me. I was just the girl who ran the dashboard to them. The only time that we had a direct call, and there were other people present on that call, was his notes on the, new dashboard tables and stuff, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was like, move this thing or change this thing. It was minor stuff. And that
He
was
he
it.
seems like the kind of guy, and we saw this during his hilariously badly run presidential campaign, of someone who talks a big game, but then when you step up in front of him or show up in front of him, he kind of whimpers and pretends he doesn't know who you are or what's happening. If you're just
Or he
tuning in,
lashes out.
what's
He's
that?
more of a lasher out. He's a
Yeah.
person who, like, when the media challenges him in his press conference, he can't control himself. His voice hits that extra octave,
Oh
Fozzie
yeah,
Bear level,
absolutely.
and he just like freaks out on them. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like that press conference, the first one he did about me, the one he did in the summer after that about me, and the one at the raid, he just loses his shit when the
Yeah.
media ask him about it. And that's true of all things. It's not just me. He cannot stand to be challenged.
Yeah. I mean, him and Trump share that feature a lot, right? The insecurity of it all. And rather than giving a measured, logical response that doesn't exist, because if it did, they would just give that. They have to, raise the octaves and become all whiny as well. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Rebekah Jones, a brilliant scientist turned whistleblower, talking about her work in saving lives during the COVID pandemic. You've got, and I fumbled this during the introduction, to call myself out there, but you've got this really impressive background academically with dual majors in journalism, in climate change and disasters. Now you've launched a new Substack that kind of fuses those together. And I don't think I've seen anyone do that yet. So it's pretty cool. Because that's one thing I love about Substack. That's one thing I love about the internet, right? You can find your niche. And this is an area where it's cool to see somebody with journalism background and science background and climate change background kind of fusing those together. Talk about that. What's the goal here? Who are you trying to reach, and how's the success been so far?
So it's a mix of different things. I cover a couple different topics. Obviously, anything that's whistleblower related or developments or stories, that's of interest to me. I often post about, action that you can take to support federal legislation or other state legislation to support whistleblowers, because God knows that we need it. And then
Yep.
outside of that, I often think about, what do I really want to know, quickly, because the media is so saturated with political hits and rampant misinformation, especially in the last like 8-9 months,
Mhm.
that I just want to know, a couple of sentences, what are the most important things that I need to know about happening in the world? And realized I couldn't just get just that straight information. And obviously there's a focus on science related news, climate change, hazards, hurricanes, epidemiology, but also international conflict. So basically I asked the question, why doesn't somebody just cut the bullshit and tell me in a couple of sentences what's happening in the world everywhere, so that I feel like I understand kind of this international landscape? And I
Yeah.
started putting that together. And that's actually been the most successful part of my Substack so far, are these briefs of what's happening in the world. Um, and it's evolved a lot since I started it. People were like, I hate hearing all about all these horrible things. Is there anything I can do? So I started including, resources that are nonprofits or government organizations that people can donate to with their charity navigator ratings, because
Yeah.
it is powerless sometimes to hear all the horrible things that are happening in the world and not feel like you can do anything. So it's been pretty successful. I'm not sure, I don't track that carefully how many subscribers I think I have, but I know it's upwards of like 50,000 or
It's great.
so. And I think there is a very much need to just have intelligent people be like, look, this is the things that you really need to know about to have, a firm grasp on what's happening in the world. And it, without the
Yeah.
politics, without, pundits or commentators, just straight facts, unbiased facts. And I'm
Yeah.
really liking.
I think it's brilliant. And I think this point I want to double down on this point you made, Rebecca. It's not just about educating people on what's happening. It's also about providing meaningful solutions on, what do we do now? Like, now that I have this information, okay, there's a genocide happening in Gaza. What do I do with that information? It's, beyond just sending out a tweet about how angry I am. And who do I donate to? And, who do I advocate for? Who do I call? Who do I, run against for Congress to try to bring about a change? So let's talk about that too, because I've run for Congress before. It's not easy. It's exhausting. It's painful. You kind of turn your life upside down, and running against someone like Gates, who I still don't understand how he's not in prison when all of his associates are. So maybe you can shed light on that as well. That had to be a unique experience. Did he show up to any debates? What was that like?
He did. He showed up to two. He had not actually done a debate since the very first time he ran in 2016. And that was when, he was fresh on the scene and he was quite pudgy, and he showed up in like flip-flops and khaki shorts and a little boy shirt that was very ill-fitting. I just saw the pictures. So yeah, he agreed to an actual debate and I kicked his ass. I'm sorry, is there like a language block on this?
No, you do whatever you got to do. You be you.
Okay,
You be you.
sorry.
Good.
I always
good.
like, if I'm doing live television news, I know better than to say that, but
I tell
usually there's
people,
flexibility.
I tell people the word ass is in the Holy Scripture. So if it's a bad word, it's God's fault, but go for it.
Not in the way that I intended. But yeah, fair enough. And so it was so bad for him. The organization that hosts it is out of the college there in Pensacola, and they've
Yeah.
posted, the full debate every year to YouTube. And they posted this one up there, and then within a day they had taken it down without explanation.
That's
They did not
hilarious.
respond to us as to why it was taken down. Of course, we got copies of it first.
Of course.
But I was so nervous. I have never debated anyone ever in my life.
Really?
So this was,
Okay.
no, I hadn't. And I was incredibly nervous because I knew the importance of it. And I knew the opportunity that I had to inform people during that debate, which was really the whole point of me running against him, was to educate people about things that were happening outside of this race. And the first like two questions, I was very nervous, and I watch it and I'm like, oh, I was like baby bird Sansa at the beginning, and by the end of it, I was like Queen of the North. And so it
That's
was,
amazing.
it was crazy. He tried to come out with this I remember the exact moment that I snapped into my own personality. He tried to make a claim about Democrats supporting post-birth abortions.
Yeah, it's
And
nonsense.
this was like the third question. And when the time he said that, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just lay him out. And it was pretty good after that. He stormed off, pissed
Of
off
course. Of
afterwards.
course.
And
Yeah.
his manservant was
Man.
like, it doesn't matter. The debate doesn't matter. We're gonna win anyways. It doesn't matter. I was like, and they got
Yeah.
my camera crew was there, so they got them like all hurt about how I'm smarter than him, which they should have already known.
They should have known that. Yeah. I mean, and this is one of my big frustrations with politics. And we're seeing it happening right now with this attack on Jamal Bowman. Is that one, there's so much just dark money and corporate money in politics that if unless you sell your soul, you have very little chance. Two, even if you have the money, even if you can raise the millions of dollars, we're so damn gerrymandered that less than 10% of districts are competitive when it should be a significantly higher number. And then three, even if you can get past those two, as Jamal Bowman did, then Democrats will, in this situation, they'll still align with MAGA Trumpists and try to primary you out. I mean, I ran against an incumbent Democrat, and all I heard was, well, we don't primary Democrats. We need party unity and, Trump and this and that. And now this guy, Latimer in New York, is literally being funded by these Trump MAGA cultists. And you got Hillary Clinton coming out and endorsing him against Jamal Bowman. I have my thoughts on this, but I would definitely want to hear, what are your thoughts on this, and how do you maintain hope when you see this kind of just absurdity happening?
I think when your single largest campaign contribution comes from AIPAC, it kind of expresses exactly what the situation is.
Yeah.
And I mean, $1.5 million to a Democratic challenger.
Crazy.
That is insane. So I raised the second most amount of money in small dollar donations in every race in Florida when I ran in 2022, except for Maxwell Frost. He had more. And he is like a movement in himself. So, no shame coming second to him in small dollar donations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that was still like $2 million, which for that race was insane. For that amount of small dollar donations was insane. And imagine somebody walking in and giving me a $1.5 million check.
Changes everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it changes. That is their race. That is their race.
Yep, they own you. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And given some of Hillary's more recent, maybe out of touch comments about the situation with young people and Gaza, that seems to be, to me, a motivating factor. But we've seen this kind of hijacking in the Democratic Party before this. I mean, what's happening to Jamal Bowman is absolutely horrific. It is shameful. It's embarrassing for our party. We should totally be back behind him. We know that, the corporate kind of Democrats have never liked anyone from the squad. And he's kind of like their token male, so we should be looking out for him. And to not be is insane. I mean, it's very distasteful. It makes me embarrassed somewhat to be a Democrat.
And I get, yeah, I agree. And I get calls all the time from people saying, well, why do you still identify as a Democrat when they're doing stuff like this? And my response to them is, I'm not going to let these corrupt people push me out, because I still believe in the ideals of what this party is supposed to be. And I still believe those ideals are worth fighting for. It's just, I think it requires, James Baldwin talks about this lot, so does the late John, well, they're both late, but John Lewis, about how, James Baldwin, I think, says it beautifully when he says, I can't tell my children there's no hope, right? I can't look at them in the eye and say there's no hope. Like, I have to give them hope. I have to tell them. And you've got kids. I've got 3 kids as well, and I can't tell them that just give it up because nothing's going to happen. We necessarily need to keep pushing forward. So I guess, and if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Rebekah Jones, a brilliant scientist turned whistleblower. Follow her on social media. Follow her on Substack. But what do you look for? What do you look towards as motivation in these kinds of trying times? I mean, we are in a weird spot with the election coming up in November and 2 very unpopular candidates for any number of reasons. How do you draw motivation in times like this?
So there is absolutely a coordinated messaging campaign to kind of denounce any prominent Democratic, especially progressive voices, who are criticizing the Biden administration to stop. I've been approached by someone who's managing an entire state for Biden's campaign about what conversations can we have to make me less critical of Biden on social media. And I was like, it depends. Is Biden willing to have conversations about the policies that are making him so unpopular? Because that's really the conversation that you need to have. You don't need to be coming to people like me and being like, could you please be nicer to the president about all these things that are troubling you? And it's been kind of this tribalism of, you're either fully behind Biden or you're supporting Trump, which is the most disingenuous kind of dichotomy that you could present to people, because I am a good Democrat because I criticize our people in our party, because we have higher standards, because we expect them to be accountable. MAGA is the group that blindly follows everything that Trump says. You could tell them something insane and say, Hillary Clinton said it, and they'll say, that's ridiculous. I would never support that policy, and say, oh, my bad, it was actually Trump. Instantly, they'll be like, you know what, on second thought, that's a great idea, and we should do it. It's not, they're blind. They're completely blinded by what works for them, which is complete control and dominance. That has never worked with our party. It will never work with our party. Instead of coming down on Democrats who are saying, please pay attention to these things because we are in these communities, and there's a reason why we're the prominent voices within these communities that are listened to, and this is going to happen. This is a problem. They've ignored people like that in the past, 2016 probably being one of the most notable examples of that, and it has cost our country. So to pretend like me saying that we need to stop aiding a genocide of people and pretending like we are their champions by, oh yes, of course we support a 2-state solution of a people that we are bombing and then feeding and then bombing more, it's not who we want to be.
And it's not sustainable either, right? It's not how you attract new voters. It's not how you grow the base. It's not how you have a long-term message that's going to inspire and motivate people to come out to the polls. I mean, if you look at primaries across the country, the turnout is low, and that should be concerning, right? That especially in a year like this, when we're facing the prospect of Trump coming back to power, a convicted felon and fascist, less worried about the felon part, more about the fascist part. Saying, well, if you don't vote for Biden, you're going to enable a fascist. Well, yes, I agree. So then we should take it more seriously and not do things that are, like enabling,
Dumb.
war crimes. And I don't
Just
understand
dumb.
why the disconnect exists in the first place.
Because they don't want to be held accountable to it. They're doing their own calculus over what their net gain and loss is for various positions that the Biden administration is taking. You have to hope that there's some reality of the basis of that calculus. But I think particularly the disengagement they're seeing with young people is going to be what ends up costing them the election. This is a race that should not be this close.
Should not.
I mean, let's get that out of the way. This guy is a rapist. He's a convicted felon. He's a fraudster. He tried to overthrow the US government because he lost.
Yep.
Absolutely unacceptable choice. That always, for some reason, we need to clear, just like we have to always clear. Of course, I don't support what happened October 7th. That's not the part of the conversation that we're having here. Young people will be that margin.
Yeah.
And
right.
What's happening in Gaza, young people are very idealistic. They're not jaded yet. They're not, disengaged yet from accepting that the world is a horrible place. And so when they see America engaging in these horrific war crimes, they don't want anything to do with it because they're young and they believe that they have that choice. Like, look, we don't have to do this. There is no legitimate reason why we have to do this. Why is it happening?
Exactly right.
And then another ridiculous thing to me was the TikTok ban.
Yeah.
Stupid. Absolutely stupid.
And yep.
It was such a blunder. And they keep making these mistakes over and over again. And you have to wonder, is somebody on his campaign working for Trump? Because the missteps that are happening here they're avoidable. These are like self-inflicted gunshot wounds. It's absolutely avoidable. And it scares people like me being like, stop playing roulette with democracy, pay attention to the things that people care about and focus on those things because you're losing the public messaging war.
You're exactly right. And we're not spending that time addressing things like ensuring we're guaranteeing healthcare or closing the wealth and income gap. We're the worst on the Gini index. Of all developed nations in the world, we have the worst wealth and income inequality. We're not addressing climate change. You're in Florida. My brother-in-law is staying with me right now because his flight got canceled back to Miami for the next 3 days because the weather is so bad.
And of course, DeSantis' mouthpieces are on Twitter harassing meteorologists and climatologists who are trying to alert this by saying, oh, I guess you welcome to Florida, it storms sometimes, it's a rainy season, blah, blah, blah. And as somebody who actually, has degrees and has published peer-reviewed literature and dedicated my life to climate science and storms specifically, that's incredibly offensive. But these people have the confidence of being wrong more than Hitler in the bunker. They don't care. And also they have not lived in Florida very long either, but that's irrelevant. It's just to dismiss
it's a game
the things that are happening all around on the ground right now and to play it like it's no big deal.
Yeah. It's
incredibly frustrating. And it's especially frustrating to be a climate scientist right now. It got easier for a few years under Obama, to be honest, because we were taking action on it. But this has been a rough few years, I think, for science in general, and for scientists in general. But this has been a particularly bad last 18 months for climate scientists. It's just
I forget who said it, but that the point of this propaganda is exhaustion. Is just to put out so much crap out there that people just get exhausted and stop responding, and then you lose. It's the apathy that ultimately kills you. We've been speaking with Rebekah Jones. Rebekah, we're down to our last 3 or 4 minutes. You have a massive platform on social media, nearly 1 million followers, which is no small feat. One of the questions I get from you, especially young people who are just starting out, is, I don't have a huge platform. I don't really have the kind of influence that people like Rebekah Jones have. And that's not to discount the work you've done to get there. And it's not to say that they're not willing to do the work. But what should young people be doing right now? How can they play a most meaningful role? And not just young people, but people who don't have the kind of platform that you might have, or people who come from, some of the not as well represented, communities out there, marginalized communities, low-income communities, people of color. What should people be doing? What advice do you have to ensure that they're not just getting angry at what's happening in the world, but they're playing a more active role in their local, their state communities, even nationally and internationally, to move the ball for justice forward?
So that's a lot. There's a
Yeah,
lot of things. I will preface my response by saying that having a platform comes with great costs, and
yeah,
that it's not an, especially as a young woman, not an easy situation to navigate. You know, I'm famous for getting fired and then getting rated at gunpoint. Those are not, great things to be known for. And it certainly, gets me a fair bit of stalking and death threats, but I don't think it's so much the size of your platform as it is the way that you use it.
oh, I love that.
And so building online communities is a big thing. I mean, half the time when you see these surges of pro-Trump or, pro DeSantis crap on Twitter, there was a coordinated group chat where they laid out the talking points and they, for just a week, hammer it over and over and over again. Because if you hear something over and over again, even if you know it's ridiculous, there's some part of it that sticks with you.
Yeah,
And being coordinated is a good thing if you're trying to spread awareness of something. And mobilizing in real life is huge. I mean, now everybody shouts their mouth off on social media, and frankly, most of the time people should not pay attention to online mobs because half the time they're probably paid for campaigns of bots and trolls and God knows who else.
yeah.
And to be there in the real world is important. And that's also scary. We've seen what's been happening to college students across the country. They're being attacked. They are being shot with rubber bullets. They are being arrested. Girls are being dragged by their hair across the yard by police, and no one's doing anything about it. If you can protest and you feel safe and if you have resources to bail yourself out, that's great. If you don't, infiltrate your local Democratic Party. Half of these like county and local organizations are run by people who are all 70 years or older, who are mostly white, mostly affluent, and the members of those boards are voted in by the members of that county's Democratic Party. And so if you bring most counties in this country, not, huge, 20 friends with you from college
Take
or
over.
from work,
Yeah,
you're done. You got to have a progressive as the head of your party in the county now. And that person represents you at the state. It is
yep.
so easy to do. It's really, really ridiculous that
I
we
love
don't
that.
get involved.
It's great.
But
I love it. So true.
it's discouraging. It's really discouraging as a young person, and more than lots of women do it. I guess for some reason, affluent white women have more spare time or interest than affluent old white men. But in my experience, most of these county clubs are run by old, bitter, crusty bitches who are, 70 years plus, and it's a problem of privilege for them. If you march down just a couple of friends, you can take over the local Democratic Party and you can refocus it to do work that's effective and makes a difference. And it literally is that easy.
I've done well over 100 episodes. No one has made that. It's such an obvious thing, but it's so brilliant. So thank you. That's such a great suggestion. Just get 20 of your friends and get involved locally, and you will take over and you'll start to call the shots. And that's how you grow and build a coalition from that standpoint. And guess what? When young people see young people engaged, they're going to want to get involved as well, because now you're addressing the things they care about. I will push back on one thing you said that I disagree with. You said that nobody, wants to be known for getting fired and getting raided. I think that speaks to your integrity. I think it speaks to your commitment to putting others, that's selflessness. I think that's certainly a painful and horrifying thing to go through, but no one is going to look back in history and be like, oh, what a terrible person. They're going to look back and say, wow, we wish we had more people like Rebekah leading the charge. So I commend you on that. And there's nothing I can say that will say it wasn't that bad, because it was horrible and always will be horrible. I will just say that there are a lot of people who thank you for having the courage that so few did. A lot of things had to go right for you to be able to save those lives, and you led the way. So thank you for that. I really do mean that. Last couple minutes, if you could share with our listeners how they can find you, how they can connect with you, how they can support you going forward.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you'll have links associated with this here, but I'm on pretty much every social media app, and it's either Geo Rebekah, and Rebekah spelled the Hebrew way, or Geo Rebekah Jones, TikTok, obviously Shitter, and Instagram. I don't ever actually log into Facebook, but everything automatically cross posts there, so that's nice. And Substack, I run Mesoscale News there. So, feel free to subscribe, like, follow, share, and reach out, because I think especially when you're covering things about corruption, one of the most important things is people coming forward. And I know the cost of that. And I've worked with a lot of sources, helping them find either media people to represent them or representing their information myself. And we need good people to tell the truth. And it should not cost you your career or your safety or your life.
Brilliant. And that happens by building the coalition. Rebekah, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, of course.
Rebekah Jones, scientist, whistleblower. Check her out at mesoscale.news. And just her work is brilliant. And I wish we had more people like her. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show. Awesome show. The most awesome show. I'm turning into Trumpian language. Awesome show, I said. Awesome show in the multiverse. That was Rebekah Jones. So glad to have her on. I've followed her work for years. And that's actually the first time I had a chance to meet her face to face. So that was pretty cool. And support her. Go to mesoscale.com. Go to my Substack. I'm recommending her as someone's Substack to follow. Subscribe to her that way. And, these are the kinds of people we need to support. Before I go, I want to give a quick update on the horrific ongoing war crimes and genocide in Gaza. The UN just came out with a stunning report, an independent report. And I'm reading directly from the UN website right now, because this is really incredible that they've come up to these conclusions. One, and I've said this since day one, they conclude that Hamas's attack on October 7th was a war crime. And I've said this since day one because they attacked civilians. And there's no scenario where attacking civilians is justified. And I've had people get upset with me about making a statement. I don't care. It's a war crime, period, done. And I'm glad that the UN independent report concluded that as well. Then they go on to say that Israel, and I'm reading this, the independent commission also concluded that in relation to Israel's military operations in Gaza, Israel committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, and violations of international humanitarian and human rights law. The commission further concluded that the immense numbers of civilian casualties and widespread destruction of civilian objects and vital civilian infrastructure were, quote, the inevitable result of Israel's chosen strategy for the use of force during these hostilities, undertaken with intent to cause maximum damage, disregarding distinction, proportionality, and adequate precautions, and thus unlawful. And they go on and on and on. And, one of the other interesting and really kind of horrifying parts of this is that now, despite the UNSC, the UN Security Council, passing a binding resolution that there must be a ceasefire, it must be a release of all hostages immediately. Hamas is saying that they accept it, but Israel is not. This is incredible to think about, that Israel is still not accepting it despite this binding resolution being passed. And so the question really is, where is the accountability going to be? Is the US going to continue to spend our tax dollars on enabling these war crimes that the UN in an independent inquiry is saying, yes, these are war crimes, and that we must stop funding these war crimes? That's the question of the hour. If we truly believe in international rules-based order, as we constantly hear, then this is the time to show it. And I thank you to finally the US didn't veto this permanent resolution, finally. But you can't just not veto it and then not do anything about it. You have to actually uphold your own resolution that you passed. Otherwise, you undermine international rules-based order. You undermine American sovereignty. You undermine the United States as a country who is supposed to be committed to upholding justice. And that's where we are right now. So we'll find out what happens in the coming days and weeks. But in the meantime, new report as I'm recording this of Israel bombing another camp of civilians. And again, it's like, where is the red line? Does the red line even exist? Because so far it hasn't, and it's horrifying. All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on social media at Qasim Rashid across all platforms. That's the same handle I have for Substack. Definitely subscribe. Putting out daily content on human rights and media accountability, and the feedback has been overwhelming. People absolutely, you guys have been amazing. So continue to support and subscribe to me there. I'm going to continue to advance a show that builds on compassion and justice and accountability for those in power. Got a great lineup for next week. Be sure to tune in. Same time, same place at 10 a.m. on Sunday on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126. My friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice, and continue speaking truth to power. Until next week, peace.